We'll talk about bad timing as the administration scrambles to resettle 10,000 new Syrian refugees in the U.S. by the president's September 30th deadline. New reports say ISIS members posing as refugees in Europe are plotting attacks over there. So, Emac, you say this is all the more reason why we should pause our refugee program here.
Yeah, Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson and also FBI Director James Comey said that even with the 2-year waiting period for refugees to come in here, by the way, I support refugees coming into this country. They said even with the 2-year waiting period, they cannot properly vet these refugees who you just need one guy who can do a lot of destruction,
right.
David.
So, Bruce, just one guy could make it bad for everybody. Shouldn't we pause the program?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty much paused as it is. We've only admitted about 2,500. It's ground to a halt. It's going so slow. And I think that we should be looking at ways to speed it up. And the vetting process, I think, is solid.
Speed it up, Rich?
No. Look, you know, the argument on the other side is that America has always had this great tolerance or welcoming of immigrants. We're all of immigrants of some kind. We have a wonderful Constitution and Bill of Rights to guarantee our freedoms, but it's not a suicide pact.
Right.
And I think that, you know, if we're not careful about this, we're, in a way, committing suicide as a country.
John, sometimes our ideals, including welcoming with open arms, welcoming refugees, is over. Sometimes you've got to be realistic about it. Sometimes it doesn't work. Maybe this is one of those times.
Well, this is not about ideals. Again, it's a 2 to 3 year process as is, and so it's hard to imagine that too many terrorists are going to wait that long. But let's assume we put a pause on. A pause is not a way to end terrorism. If terrorists want to get in, they're going to figure out a way. They just won't go through the normal refugee process. So I don't hear the solution here.
Yeah, well, Bill, maybe there isn't a solution, but at least we could take a step of stopping what might be a problem now.
No, I don't think we should eliminate Syrian immigration, but we should, for humanitarian reasons, limit it to women and children. Let the young men stay behind and clean up their country so they don't have to send their families abroad for safety.
I see John shaking his head no, but Sabrina, what do you think of that?
Well, I realize that there's a big difference between the million refugees who have entered into Europe and the maybe 10,000 that we're talking about here, but I do think I'm in agreement with Emac. I think we need to be very cautious and make sure we have a system in place. I think we cannot sort of underestimate the thousands of years that it took us to get to the point that we are here in the United States with gender equality, with equal rights, with a respect for human rights, and it's simply not the case in all parts of the globe.
You know, John, when Bill mentioned his only let the women and children in, I saw you shaking your head. Now, that's Donald Trump. Donald Trump says, you know, I see too many of these healthy young guys in these refugee communities. What are they doing there? Maybe just limiting it to the women and children would be a good idea. Why did you shake your head?
Well, wouldn't that be great? Oh, let's just limit it to women and children. That doesn't limit men coming in. They just get in a different fashion if they want to mean us harm. I subscribe to the Colin Powell Pottery Barn notion. If you break it, it's yours. Possibly with the best intentions, the U.S. is to stabilize the Middle East, and I think we owe it to the refugees.
You can't stretch what this cliche has become to cover all of U.S. policy over a very dangerous situation. One of the real serious problems Europe is facing right now is that the refugees refuse to follow Western laws. And they instead adhere to the system that they rejected, meaning Sharia. That is so bad. If they come to the West, they should pledge allegiance to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, first thing.
Bruce, what do you think of that?
Listen, there's a lot of cities and communities out there that are welcoming these things. You guys are generally for local government control, state control. If there are communities in this country that want to welcome... No, they're not for Sharia. They're for these communities that want to... Oh, for goodness sake, it is not.
It is happening, Bruce. If you wake up and follow the news, it is happening. There are
communities that want these refugees. There are communities that want these refugees.
Wake up, Bruce. I'm just telling you the news.
These refugees are
hey, guys, let's switch to one subject that I think we might all agree on, which is numbers. And John Tamny, I know you may be in favor of this, but on the other hand, there are costs associated with resettlement. First of all, there's the resettlement cost itself, which is quite a bit per refugee, but there's also the fact that they are entitled to welfare programs, 4 major welfare programs. First of all, food stamps, supplemental security income, temporary assistance for needy families, that's cash, and then Medicaid for 7 years.
Well, that I wouldn't support. Let's face it, if the resettlement program is expensive, that's a problem. But that is not
expensive.
Going to keep,
I'm telling you, it is expensive. Maybe you should rethink it.
And don't we owe it to them for what's happened in the Middle East? I think to some degree the U.S. is responsible, but I, no more than you, like that there are government programs for people once they get here.
And Bill, the problem with government programs, particularly the welfare programs, is it attracts the wrong kind of people who come here for handouts, not just to work.
I like Paul Ryan's solution to the cost problem. He says, let's put in a work requirement for those welfare benefits.
Interesting. All right, let's leave it at that. That's a good proposal.